March 22nd, 1945, 2300 hours, wet fields west of the Rhine near Viersen, blackout hoods over lanterns and canvas slick with dew. Night breathes in rubber and gasoline. A squad from the 603rd Camouflage Engineers hauls a bundled shape out of a deuce and a half, unrolling seams until an M4 Sherman appears as a collapsed skin. Strength looks like laundry. Air pumps cough and whine, valves hiss. And the tank stands up in 20 minutes. Turret ring firm, gun tube taut, shadow perfect against hedgerow and moon. A phantom finds its posture. Across a dirt lane, a row of 155 Manoavs, howitzers, rises behind scrim nets, barrels pointed east as if waiting for fire missions they will never receive. Pretend can look lethal. On a nearby track, an M3 half track from the 3132 Signal Service Company, Special grinds into position. Its rack of speakers like a pipe organ aimed at the water. Sound becomes a weapon. A technician checks the wire recorder and 500-watt amplifiers, then nods to the driver as the first loop rolls. Clanking trades, idling engines, shouted orders, chains dragging steel. The river hears a fiction. Engineers had built that library months before at Fort Knox, capturing every surface. Gravel, wooden bridge, mud. So tonight a convoy can arrive, in the dark where none will. Authenticity sells the lie. 15 miles away, in a listening post beyond the east bank, German eavesdroppers catch layered noise and triangulate new radio call signs they swear weren't there yesterday. Confusion takes a bearing. Inside a blackout tent, the signal company special keys a net that imitates 2 American divisions, the 30th, Old Hickory, and 79th, Cross of Lorraine, complete with operators who have studied the fists of real men they're impersonating. Voices wear borrowed names. They lace the air with routine march tables, bridge priorities, fuel dumps moving to phase line able, with chatter that feels too dull to fake and therefore true. Mundane becomes dangerous. Down the road. Special effects. Team stencils bumper codes onto a pool of trucks and swaps shoulder patches in a cafe, where French eyes will gossip eastward by morning. Rumour is an engine, too. A platoon of MPs repositions signs to suggest a divisional rear area, and a stray courier rides past in a jeep with 79 IR, chalked on the windshield as if late to a rendezvous. Motion creates belief. On their map boards. 9th Army staff watches the deception bloom exactly where they want German artillery to stare, a decoy assembly area out of range of the real bridges that will go up at Weisel under Montgomery's Operation Plunder. The curtain rises on the wrong stage. Men from the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, 100 specialists of camouflage, sound, signal, and engineering, work in clipped silence, checking seams, guying down nets, and laying fake track marks with a drag sled. Craft becomes strategy. An SBD of mist hangs over the fields and catches the silhouettes just enough to make everything look heavier than it is. The air sweet with hay and the bitter of oil. The senses do half the work. Rarely, if ever, has there been a group of such a size, specifically organized to wage a war of nerves on the enemy. Lieutenant Fred Fox will write in the unit's 1945 report. They were built to be believed. Across the river, an oberst with a pencil mustache stares at an operations board where pins sprout opposite Krefeld, listening to a staff captain mutter that the Americans are thickening their line. Doubt hardens into worry. Earlier in the war, German officers had laughed at Allied tales of attrappen. Dummy tanks, straw airfields, plywood guns. Good for training films and magazines, not for high command decisions. No one is laughing now. A gust rattles the nets, and the inflation lines tremble like arteries. But the rubber holds and the silhouettes stay true. A canvas battalion stands in neat rows behind hedge and ditch. The ghost has weight. Down by a streambed, the 406th Engineer Combat Company digs fake foxholes, throws up wire, and leaves the mess that real soldiers make: empty ration tins, cigarette butts, a mud-chalked map scrap pinned under a stone. Clutter is a signature. At 01:15, the sound trucks shift tracks to Bridging Under Fire, a louder, angrier mix that bleeds across the Rhine, while the radio net reports a traffic jam that only an army-sized column could create. Pressure sells the picture. A German artillery battery east of the water lobs, a few ranging rounds toward the phantom assembly area, bursting black against empty muck as a flare drifts and paints the inflatable silver. Their fire chases shadows. In the dim, an artist, soldier from the 603rd steps back from a perfect Sherman and touches the rubber with his knuckles, the way a painter taps a canvas to feel what he's made. Illusion brushes against reality. From a slit trench, a sergeant whispers to his runner to get some sleep before dawn, because they'll be moving the whole division twice tomorrow to look like it's growing. Scale is theatre. The 23rd's deception spreads in rings, visible, audible, electromagnetic, until German intelligence officers must choose: assume a trick and risk surprise, or believe a show and commit reserves. Choice becomes trap. By the time darkness thins toward a grey eastern seam, the field of ghosts breathes like a crowded bivouac, tents slumped, trucks parked by number, tanks brooding under nets that smell of rubber and rain. A lie hums with life. The 23rd Headquarters Special Troops did not look like an army at all. 100 men split among artists, radio operators, sound technicians, and camouflage engineers, yet their orders put whole German corps on edge. Small hands built big shadows. Their components were precise. The 613rd Engineer Camouflage Battalion, specialed for visual trickery; the 3130 Econ Signal Service Company, specialed for sound; the 406th Engineer Combat Company for special effects and fieldcraft, and the 23rd's own signal company for radio impersonation. Each trade became a weapon. In a plain 1945 unit report, Lt. Fred Fox wrote the line that defined them: "The mission of the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops is to simulate actual units by every means available in order to mislead, confuse, and threaten the enemy." Deception was doctrine. They trained on American soil to make lies feel heavy, recording tanks on gravel at Fort Knox, studying radio, fists, until every operator's rhythm could be mimicked, laying out inflatable M4s and M10s until their silhouettes passed a quick glance at 500 yards. The stage was built in daylight, across the Channel and then across France. Patton's name did as much work as any decoy. After Fortitude's Phantom 1st U.S. Army Group made him the spearhead of a non-existent invasion at the Pas de Calais, German intelligence learned to fear his arrival more than any map square. A reputation became a lure. When Third Army burst from Normandy, the 23rd slipped in and out of its wake, at crossroads near Metz, on the Moselle, and along the Luxembourg line, standing up inflatables, moving radio nets, and faking traffic so the enemy would brace for a punch that never came. Illusion opened flanks. German staffs had long catalogued Attrappen, straw tanks, plywood guns, dummy airfields, and laughed at them as training toys fit for newsreels, not decisions. They scoffed at rubber and paint, but by autumn 1944 they had been burned by Fortitude and Garbo's messages, and their listening posts along the West Wall now put faith in ether and bearings more than photographs. Ears outranked eyes. The 23rd turned that faith back on them. Radio teams cloned the call signs and chatter of the 30th, 79th, and other divisions, complete with operators who had practiced the quirks of real men until their keying sounded right to German Funkaufklo. Rung units east of the river. Imitation became identity. They never pretended to be everything, only enough: a regiment here, an armoured battalion there. The motor pool of a division arriving at night, a bridge train grumbling toward a ford that would never see steel. credibility lived in limits. Deception must be believable, and must fit the enemy's picture of the situation. Reads a 12th Army Group deception note they carried forward into 1945. The lie had to sit where truth might. By March, the stakes were the Rhine. Montgomery's 21st Army Group, preparing Operation Plunder at Wesel with 9th U.S. Army under William H. Simpson on the left, British and American airborne, ready for Operation Varsity overhead, and German Army Group B under Walter Model, clinging to the last river barrier of the West. A crossing meant finishing. 9th Army needed the East Bank guns to look the wrong way, toward Krefeld and Viersen, long enough for bridges to bite into the Rhine unmolested. A glance could save lives. Thus, Operation Viersen, a full-spectrum deception inflatables and decoy artillery parks in muddy fields, radio nets that imitated 2 U.S. divisions shifting forward, and sonic trucks broadcasting pre-built soundscapes of bridging and convoy jams at night. Noise would do the lifting. The plan called for movement rhythms that matched reality. Convoys arriving on D2, artillery registering on D1, and engineers sounding off about timber shortages and bridging priorities at 2300 hours when tired men complain most. Routine was the camouflage. German aerial reconnaissance had dwindled, but their ground patrols and agents still watched road signs and shoulder patches. The 406th laid the breadcrumbs with bumper codes, MP detours, and bored drivers in cafes wearing the right divisional insignia. The human eye sees what it expects. Behind all of it ran the technical edge wire, recorded tracks pumped through 500-watt amplifiers on M3 half-tracks, CXAM-derived Allied radar and traffic control keeping the real crossings clean, and radio discipline tight enough to let the fakes speak while the real nets went quiet. Precision hid the main effort. The Germans listening east of the water were not fools. Veteran radio men who could triangulate a net by tone, who knew American procedures well enough to smell a mismatch. But the 23rd matched volumes, schedules, and call signs until the picture snapped into place. Skepticism met craft. Rarely, if ever, has there been a group of such a size, specifically organized to wage a war of nerves on the enemy. Fox noted with dry pride as the unit's operations stacked up across France and into Germany. Confidence rose with each ruse, and over it all hovered Patton's ghost. Real Third Army columns surging elsewhere, a phantom army that had once kept German eyes fixed on Calais, and a small band of experts now making an entire front sound, like it was about to break loose where it wasn't. A legend amplified a whisper. By the week of the Rhine crossing, the problem for German staffs was ugly and simple. Commit artillery and reserves against what seemed like 2 divisions massing near Viersen, or hold back and risk the bridges going up unopposed at Wesel. Doubt became a weapon. The 23rd gave them the wrong answer with rubber, radio, and recorded steel. And the night before, plunder the fields west of the river looked and sounded like an army that had arrived to stay. The darkness smelled of rain, gasoline, and fear. The 23rd Headquarters Special Troops built a battlefield instrument out of rubber, copper, magnetics, and nerve. An orchestra whose sections were camouflage, sound, radio, and fieldcraft playing in tight synchronization. Deception became a machine. Inflatable M4 Shermans, M10 tank destroyers, and 155 Menandride guns arrived as canvas bundles stamped by US rubber and Goodyear, light enough for 2 men to carry, detailed enough that at 300 yards a silhouette read as steel. Lightness impersonated weight. Valves hissing. Foot pumps and compressors brought a battalion to life in 20 minutes. Turret shapes and gun tubes tightening like muscles beneath net and dew as crews dressed the scene with fuel cans, tire ruts, and oil smears. Illusion wore the mess of reality. The 623rd Engineer Camouflage Battalion, Special studied angles like gunners study range, placing decoys where German optics, ground posts and occasional reconnaissance flights would catch the right profile and shadow. Visibility was a weapon. They not only set what the enemy should see, they set what he should not. Erecting screens, burning dummy fires, and dragging chain sleds cut with tank tread patterns along verges to seed road edges with fresh tracks. Footprints sold the lie. Deception must fit the enemy's picture of the situation. Read the 12th Army Group's guidance. A line the 23rd treated as scripture, as they scaled displays to match what a division or regiment would reasonably park in a field. Credibility was the fuse. Sonic deception came mounted on M3 tracks racks of wide, cone speakers driven by 500-watt amplifiers, fed by wire recorders that played curated loops of armor convoys, engineer bridging, and artillery trains. Sound became steel. The library had been built at Fort Knox and elsewhere, recordings made for gravel, mud, and bridge decks so that the same tank could arrive, with a different tread, timber depending on the night stage. Texture made truth. In favourable wind, the 3132nd Signal Service Company, Special, could project a mechanised column for miles across low ground, layering engine idle, gear shifts, shouted commands, and chain drag into a believable approach. Distance carried fear. Rarely, if ever, has there been a group of such a size, specifically organised to wage a war of nerves on the enemy. Louty Fred Fox wrote in the unit's 1945 report, charting a new doctrine that treated anxiety as an artillery branch. Nerves were ammunition. Radio deception, spoofing, was the invisible arm. Operators of the 23rd Signal Company cloned divisional nets, lifted call signs from staff SOIs, and mimicked the distinctive fists of real Morse senders until German Funkofkel rung accepted them as familiar voices. Imitation forged identity. They opened and closed nets on schedule, sent routine logistics chatter, and faked message center backlogs so that traffic quantity matched the headcount of two divisions the 23rd could pretend to be. Volume implied mass. Call sign rotations, authentic brevity, and plausible mistakes kept the net human. An operator might request repeats, drag a 7, or hurry a final as if distracted by a lieutenant at his shoulder. Flaws proved life. The 406th Engineer Combat Company handled special effects, MP checkpoints, rerouted traffic, fresh unit signs, dummy dumps, even boilerplate gossip in cafes so that German agents and civilians repeated what their eyes and ears believed. Rumour became circuitry. Doctrine bound the parts into one tempo. Arrive at dusk. Stand up inflatables that match the authorized strength of the unit being impersonated. Open radio nets at the hour that unit would roll in sonic traffic after midnight and relocate pieces at dawn to suggest reinforcement. Rhythm equaled reality. They learned limits the hard way. Too many tanks without fuel trucks looked wrong. Too much radio for one regiment drew suspicion. Sonic convoys that arrived without fresh tracks undercut the show, no matter how well the actors spoke. Balance kept the mask on. The British school of deception, Fortitude's ghosts, double agents, and map feints, fed the doctrine, but the 23rd added American engineering grit, turning laboratory ideas into field kits that could be lashed down in rain and mud. Theory met mud. On paper they were just worth 100 men under Colonel Harry L. Reader, yet their tables of organisation built a force multiplier. Each specialty could be massed or thinned to copy a cavalry screen 1 week, and an infantry division the next. Elasticity bred power. In practice they stayed disciplined about scale, using an artillery park here, an armoured battalion there, never claiming the whole of an army, only the persuasive slice that made German staffs nudge reserves to the wrong grid square. Believability set the hook. Fox called the unit a travelling road show, and it was the 603rd painting and pumping under nets, the 132nd queuing tracks by phase, the signal company tapping code in a borrowed fist, and the 406th planting mundane details in ditches and doorways. Theatre became doctrine. They understood counterintelligence, too, enforcing tight circles, so that even friendly units nearby saw only what they should, while the 23rd's own insignia and bumper markings changed like costumes between acts. Camouflage covered the actors. Where German staffs expected strength, the 23rd gave them signals that fit reconnaissance habits, optics, bearings, chatter, and where Germany lacked air power in 1945, the ground truth became what microphones and maps declared. Perception replaced patrols. By the time the Rhine crossings loomed, this machine could be spun up on the 24 hours' notice, fired across a river line, and collapsed by noon to reappear miles away, leaving behind nothing but tire prints and a memory on the enemy's net. Mobility made it lethal. Doctrine, gear, and craft clicked like gears, and the empty fields west of the Rhine could throb with an army that did not exist. Exact in detail, disciplined in pace, and tuned to the enemy's instruments. The ghost learned to breathe.